Hey everyone, I'm Abby Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. So today, as you can see, we're not in the usual studio. We're currently building a new exciting studio and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. But of course, everything takes longer than expected in construction, so we're working in a temporary space today. And so today we're going to be talking about something that was heavily requested. That is Stephanie Buttermore's All In videos. So I'm really excited to speak about this because it's just something that I'm personally really interested in as well. And I did quite a lot of research in preparation for this video, so that's why this took me so long. So basically, Stephanie Buttermore is a fitness enthusiast and a former fitness bikini competitor. And she's also no dummy. She's got a PhD in pathology and cellular biology, so she infuses a lot of science into her content, which you know I really appreciate. And in some of her past videos, she's really kind of broke down the great lengths that she's had to go to kind of cut body fat, increase muscle, and succeed in the bikini fitness competitive world. Unfortunately, in that process, she experienced a lot of unpleasant symptoms that we often associate with something we call hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is a very common condition in the kind of aesthetic sports world. So the term amenorrhea basically means loss of period or loss of your menstrual cycle. And the main causes of amenorrhea in general are low caloric intake, low body fat, excessive exercise, stress, and of course, genetic predisposition. And you don't need to look like a fitness model to be at risk for hypothalamic amenorrhea, which I'm now gonna call HA because it is a big word, and that's gonna save me a lot of energy. But cutting calories or over-exercising at any size can put you at greater risk of things like infertility, osteoporosis, and premature cardiovascular disease. In fact, an expert review in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that cutting calories by just 470 calories per day was enough to increase people's risk of HA, especially when paired with intense exercise. So while Stephanie did not actually lose her period, she did experience a lot of the same symptoms that we find and associate with over-exercising, caloric restriction, and HA in general. So let's take a look.
Deficit or having HA. I was experiencing things like being really cold all the time. I was tired. I feel like my strength took a really big hit, and most inconveniently, I was ravenously hungry.
So some of the most common side effects of HA are things like feeling really cold, really tired, low libido, low bone density, brittle hair or nails, bowel issues, decreased strength, etc. So basically all the energy in your body is directed towards the essential functions in the body, like breathing, and things that are not essential to healthy living, like I don't know, beautiful, long, luscious hair, get kind of put by the wayside. Okay, so let's talk about this extreme hunger thing because I feel like a lot of people who have been in the throes of diet culture and restriction have probably experienced something like this. So let's see what she has to say about it.
And I've been able to eat a lot since I was really young. I've just had to get used to stopping at 50 to 60% fullness because of my, bottomless pit stomach. That's just what I've had to do to maintain a lower weight. However, I've gotten to the point where it's getting harder than ever to do this, to stop, because I'm so hungry all the time, and it's quite frankly pretty exhausting and seemingly unsustainable. And genetically, I do think that I just have a really high or large capacity. I think a lot of this is due to genetics, and I think from dieting, I think my hunger has gotten worse. So what I want to try to do is I want to try to fix it, and I'm going to be going all in an attempt to fix it.
So this makes sense just knowing what we know about dieting in general. And for someone who is a bikini and fitness competitor who probably had to diet pretty hard, I'm not really surprised about this kind of extreme hunger symptom. But basically what's happening here is that when we restrict calories, we see an uptick in our stress hormone cortisol, which with our hunger and satiety hormones, so ghrelin and leptin. And leptin is stored in our fat cells. So when we shrink our fat cells because we've lost weight, we see a decline in leptin. And our hypothalamus kind of freaks out and demands for us to eat more in an attempt to restore those fat stores, hence the extreme hunger. I mean, isn't the body just so amazing? So with all this said, Stephanie, being kind of the science-minded person that she is, reached out to Dr. Nicola Rinaldi, who is the leading expert in HA and HA recovery. She's the author of No Period, Now What, which is a book that I've read and I've found just so fascinating and packed with so much information. So if you might be struggling with HA, I definitely recommend this book. But from their conversation, this is what Dr. Rinaldi recommended.
He was sort of generally active, getting some walking through the day, that kind of thing.
If you are truly committed to rescuing your cycle, she recommends jumping up to at least 2,500 calories a day and cutting back or altogether eliminating intense bouts of exercise. And if you've been restricting your calories and training really intensely for a long time, yes, you will gain some weight, which is kind of the point. But granted, this may not be the appropriate route for everyone.
Okay, so just to paraphrase exactly that, Dr. Rinaldi recommends a minimum of 2,500 calories per day, with no maximum. So really it's just a matter of kind of eating to satiety and cutting out any intense exercise. And like she said, you're gonna gain weight, that's kind of the point, but this is the idea of going all in. So what is going all in and how does it differ from traditional methods of weight restoration like reverse dieting? So basically, reverse dieting is often called the diet after the diet. Basically what it involves is a small caloric surplus over a longer period of time. So sometimes weeks, sometimes months. And the idea is to slowly gain weight, restore hormones, restore the metabolism without seeing like a huge shoot up in weight or body fat. So a little bit of backstory here. During periods of caloric restriction, what we often see is the body trying to prevent starvation by slowing down the metabolic rate so that it burns less energy or less calories. And then when that person kind of comes off the diet and starts eating normally again, aka more calories, what we see is the body tries to return to its previous weight, and it does so by storing a lot of the energy as fat because it's a safe reserve of energy for the body. So what ends up happening is that we see people's weight shoot up quite rapidly after kind of coming off the diet. And this is often what we call post-starvation obesity, pardon the offensive term. But for Stephanie, reverse dieting didn't really work because although she saw some weight gain, she was still experiencing a lot of the same symptoms associated with HA, things like extreme hunger. So with that said, that is why Stephanie was going all in.
Wholeheartedly want to just try this for myself. I want to wake up and eat at every single meal, and I want to eat to the point that I actually feel satiated until I'm completely full, regardless of how many calories it actually takes.
So it sounds like quite the stark departure from Stephanie's kind of fitness model days. So let's talk a little bit more about all in. So I first want to touch on the idea of set point theory because this is very important to kind of the premise of all in. So set point theory basically means that your body tries really hard to maintain its comfortable weight range by regulating its metabolism. So basically, it will speed metabolism up when it's being overfed, and it'll slow metabolism down when the body's being underfed in an effort to eliminate large fluctuations in one's weight. So this is exactly why most people just regain the weight that they lost after they go on a diet. Your body will fight like hell to get back to where it wants to be. And this is one of the many reasons why I find it just so idiotic that we would ever criticize somebody based on their weight. Because our weight has nothing to do with moral character, willpower, or what we do or eat. Our body literally just wants to be what it wants to be, and it'll do whatever it takes and shut down every other body process, including reproduction, just to get back there. Unfortunately, research suggests that set points go up, but they rarely come down. And one of the best ways to increase your set point is to diet. And that's largely because one of the ways that your body fights to regain its set point is through this extreme hunger. It's through those fluctuations in ghrelin and leptin, our hunger and satiety hormones. Other ways that our body fights to maintain set point are things like a decline in our thyroid hormone, which makes us fatigued and makes us move less, an increase in a lot of the gastric hormones, which increases our hunger, and an increase in gastric emptying, which increases our hunger. So Stephanie believes that by going all in, she'll she'll kickstart her metabolism, send it working into high gear. She'll eventually kind of reach a weight plateau where she'll no longer feel that extreme hunger sensation. So she'll need fewer calories to feel satiated. And she believes she'll then kind of lose this overshoot weight while maintaining a healthy, active lifestyle. So I asked Dr. Rinaldi about this actually, and she told me that she doesn't like to make promises to women that you will eventually lose some of this overshoot weight. But yes, sometimes it does happen once you start eating a little bit more intuitively after having to kind of semi-force feed yourself in the early stages of this process. So having said that, you might lose some overshoot weight, if you want to call it that, or you might just stay the weight that you plateaued at if that is the weight that your body just naturally wants to be. So one of the big questions I know I'm going to be getting here is, does going all in carry any risks? Well, I think the one that we're most concerned about is refeeding syndrome. Refeeding syndrome is when a starving person eventually eats again, and the shock to the body causes kind of fluctuations and shifts in electrolytes and fluids. This is why making any extreme changes to your diet ideally should be done under medical supervision. But is going all in a risk factor for refeeding syndrome? So some of the risk factors for refeeding syndrome include a BMI under 15, little or no food for 10 days or more, low electrolyte levels, and use or misuse of alcohol or drugs, including diuretics. So based on the information that I have about Stephanie, I would say that she's probably not high risk, but again, I'm not her doctor, so this is definitely not diagnostic, but we definitely would see this more often with eating disorder patients. Okay, so how does going all in work out for Stephanie?
Last month, I have been all in, and I've been eating about 5,000 calories a day. Well, 4,820 to be exact, according to MyFitnessPal. And that number was not a target or anything. I didn't have any specific number in mind. That was just how many calories it took for me to feel satiated every single day.
Okay, so after going all in, Stephanie was consuming about 5,000 calories at the beginning of her therapy, and she gained about 18 pounds after the first month. Her latest update shares that she's gained about 30 pounds to date, and she's unsure if she's plateaued or if she's still got further to go, but she seems so happy and energetic. I love watching her videos. She also talks about one of the amazing things is she's not as hungry anymore. She doesn't have the ravenous appetite that she used to have at the beginning of this process. So I think that alone is huge progress for Stephanie. So I know you're thinking, oh my God, 5,000 calories seems like a ton for somebody of, Stephanie's size. But actually, this is not uncommon, especially for women who are struggling with HA or trying to recover from an eating disorder. It's very common that we need a high amount of calories to kind of kick that hypothalamus back into gear. So 5,000, 4,000, somewhere in that range is very, very common for this kind of recovery. So early on in her recovery process, Stephanie also talks about some of the symptoms and side effects of going all in. So let's take a look.
Kind of started experiencing a lot of the side effects that come along with eating that many calories. I was super sweaty and hot all the time. My face was always really swollen and puffy in the morning. So at the beginning of going all in, I kind of felt like every single day I woke up, my face was super puffy. And today is like one of the first days that I feel like it looks pretty normal. It doesn't look super puffy. I do feel like my face has more volume in it just simply due to the fact that I've gained like 13 pounds, but it doesn't look puffy like I just got like punched in the face or something or have like an allergic reaction, which is how my face was looking right at the beginning of being all in.
So when it comes to the sweating, heavily restricting calories prevents your body from kind of regulating temperature through sweating, and this, paired with maybe some improved thyroid functions, might be why she was experiencing some of those symptoms. As for the kind of swelling feeling or kind of edema, this might be because she's consuming more calories, which probably means more carbohydrates, and an uptick in carbohydrates means storage of glycogen, which is stored with water, so there is some water retention there. And depending on her food choices, if she was consuming just more salt than what she's used to, the carbs and the salt can cause some water retention, especially if you're not used to it, but over time your body would adjust. I want to talk about where I think that Stephanie is really rocking it. First of all, her enormous amount of bravery for coming out and kind of making this process public, especially when she has built a whole brand around restriction and dieting and kind of fitness competitions and all of that. In one of her videos, she is in Bali and she's crying because, her belt doesn't fit around her bathing suit anymore as her body has been changing so rapidly. And not only is this moment like so raw and relatable, but it also proves that this journey is not a linear one, and that it's possible to be body positive and love and appreciate your body, even if you don't feel like a rock star every single day. Part of being body positive is accepting yourself and being kind to yourself. So thinking that like you have to do body positivity perfectly is just not productive. Number two, she's prioritizing her health, energy, and future fertility over aesthetic goals and being thin. While I do hear some kind of fat-phobic language occasionally in her talking, I also get that it's really hard to unlearn that kind of stuff when you've been part of toxic diet culture for so long. So I really appreciate, though, that she's trying to make space in the fitness community for different sized bodies. And also she talks about how, having more body fat does not equate to being less healthy. And in fact, in her recent video, she talks about how, having more energy and eating more and having more body fat actually has had some kind of fitness and training benefits as well. Number three, she seeks out the advice of experts who are actually evidence-based. So I was really happy to see that Stephanie reached out to Dr. Rinaldi, who is a leading expert in HA and someone that I also reached out to for this review. So that's fantastic. Stephanie also talks about how, she's not qualified to tell people what to do or how to eat. She just wants to share her own experience for people's kind of learning and entertainment. That is really the responsible thing to do when you have such a massive following. I mean, every body is going to be different and have different needs. So it's always best to seek out professional advice when it comes to making drastic changes to your diet and lifestyle. I just want to flag that we want to make sure that the people that we are recommending our followers to for help are actual professionals. I know that there's like a lot of great influencers out there who are anti-diet and pro-health and may have some good information. For example, I know that Stephanie kind of brought forward another influencer named Kayla to talk about her experience, and that's great, super inspiring. However, these are not a replacement for an actual dietitian and therapist team. Number four, Stephanie vows to stop tracking her macros and calories and weighing herself. I'm really glad that Stephanie mentions this because I do think it's hard for people to learn to eat intuitively and not fall back into kind of disordered eating behaviors when there's such a focus on tracking and calculating and keeping tabs on weight, size, food intake, etc. I get that that was definitely like an important part of the process early on, and it typically is for things like HA or eating disorder recovery. But once we're kind of through that and focusing more on learning to eat intuitively, we really have to kind of let those rules go. And finally, she talks about buying new clothes. So I think this is a really fantastic step in recovery from restrictive eating and underfeeding. And I recognize that, Stephanie is obviously in a privileged state and place where she's able to purchase a whole new wardrobe. But even going to your local donation bin or doing a clothing swap, finding kind of other more cost-effective ways to get some clothing that fits and feels good is a really important step when it comes to kind of shedding that diet mentality. But, being in clothes that don't fit just doesn't feel good emotionally or physically, even if you're totally kind of in a weight neutral space. But in Dr. Rinaldi's book, she talks about how we can think about our too small clothing as being kind of like our unwell clothes, and that shedding those clothes or getting rid of them is a way to shed our unhealthy relationship with food and our restrictive behaviors and kind of that diet culture and mentality. So next, I want to talk about some potential ways that I think that Stephanie can kind of further her journey and kind of work towards a better relationship with food. So first of all, getting rid of the diet culture talk. Now, I get that a lot of it is kind of for jokes, but I remember there's this like one scene where she's kind of loosening up her belt on her fanny pack and talking about how, oh, you know, a backpack doesn't judge you when you get fat, but a fanny pack does. Again, I get that this is just kind of like and giggles for her and just kind of basic banter with her partner, but there is still some fat phobic talk in her videos, and I also think that you know, there's a lot of talk about clean eating and getting in her cheat days to kind of get in all her cravings and things like that. So it seems like she's not completely all in from a psychological perspective quite yet, but I also get that it's going to take a long time to unlearn and undo all the damage that diet culture has had on her life. And I've already actually seen an improvement in her latest video, so I do think that Stephanie's definitely on the right track. I just wanted to kind of flag that here before some of you go and watch her full videos, because I do think it could be triggering for some people. Number two, she still has some rules here. She talks about like a 75-25 rule. So she describes how her kind of all-in diet is 75% kind of clean food, really kind of healthy, nutrient-dense food, and 25% is like junk food because she likes balance. So like you'll see her eating donuts and cakes and other kind of sweet things that she would associate with like her cheat days. Again, I think this is just kind of like part of the process, and unlearning that diet culture piece. She's so used to having these kind of cheat days interspersed between like severe restriction, and over time, as she really hones those intuitive eating skills, she'll find that she doesn't need to be so deliberate in her planning for meals, and she also won't need those cheat days. So here's the thing, I hate the idea of cheat days. I think that they assign way too much moral value to food. And when instead you actually just start to kind of like listen to your body and eat intuitively, it's very possible to feel satisfied on a single piece of chocolate and not feel the need to kind of overdo it right after. And yeah, some days you're gonna want that second piece of chocolate cake because it tastes so good. But because you're not judging yourself and you're not feeling the need to kind of jump right back on that restrict, binge, repent, repeat cycle again and again, you won't feel the need to totally overdo it. And finally, she is still exercising quite heavily, despite Dr. Rinaldi's recommendation. So I just want to flag that, you know, this might work for her because I know she did not lose her period, so she just had some of the other symptoms of HA. But I wanted people to know that for a lot of women who are struggling with HA, you know, it really has to be very gentle exercise because we can see that uptick in cortisol, which again kind of triggers a lot of these symptoms and can prevent you from getting your cycle back. Not everybody, everyone's unique, and that is really why we want to seek out kind of individual help from a professional when we're dealing with HA. So I want to close off with something that I heard, I think Kayla say in one of Stephanie's video, and that is the more that you control food, the more it controls you. Yes, yes, yes. Your body is so intuitive and so smart, and when we just allow it to kind of run its course and feel hungry and feel satisfied on its own terms, we really can fall into its healthiest, happiest weight. That is actually the best place for us, metabolically, reproductively, everything. In terms of all of the benefits, Stephanie talks about how going all in made her feel fuller, more energized, made her kind of recover better from workouts, which absolutely makes sense because it's very hard to be anabolic and catabolic at the same time. And most importantly, she talks about how it just made her happier. And it actually made her connect with her partner more, which is not surprising because we connect with people through food. Overall, I think that Stephanie has made some major strides in terms of having a better relationship with food and her body. And while there's definitely still some kind of diet culture evidence bubbling on the surface, I think that's to be expected just based on how long she's been entrenched in it. But judging by her commitment, I have no doubt that Stephanie is going to be a huge, amazing cheerleader for the intuitive eating movement. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for your bravery, for sharing your story, for sharing this journey, and I'm looking forward to seeing more videos and updates. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below with other kind of diets or YouTubers you want me to review. I also would love to know if you have any Q&A kind of questions for me, because I'm going to be doing a Q&A video very soon, and I would love to collect all of your juicy questions. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!